Hello, future quitters. I say that because I realize that this season is the information and the inspiration that I wish I had 10 years ago when I was thinking about quitting my day job. And funny enough, we have a wonderful guest on this episode that I am so excited for you to hear from. Her name is Ann Lester, and she is the former head of retirement solutions at JP Morgan Asset Management. And fun fact, I used to work at JP Morgan in asset management, and I had my existential crisis while I was there. And that was the turning point for me to decide what I wanted to do with my life and my future when I myself got a kidney stone from working so hard that I ended up in the hospital. And I think though the universe reveals itself in different ways to now present Ann Lester to me 10 years later, now as a guest on this podcast. And you're going to hear such an amazing conversation between her and Steph. I was so glad to listen to this as a listener and not as one of the interviewers because there were so many little nuggets that I picked up. So if you are someone who is thinking about what retirement could and should look like, but you're not sure how that works, if you've ever heard of target funds and you have no idea what that means in your 401k, if you are someone who's had an existential crisis and now figuring out what you want to do, are you someone who is looking for a next step in your career and you're looking at the steps that are immediately ahead of you in your current career and none of it appeals to you? Then this is the episode that you absolutely need to listen to. And I can't wait to hear what you think about it afterwards. Let's listen in.
Welcome to Crush Your Money Goals, where we dive deep into all things money as your 2 millionaire mentors. I'm Bernadette Joy.
And I'm Stephanie Gonzalez. This season, we're shifting gears and focusing on something that affects us all, quitting with confidence.
From financial habits to career transitions, we're here to guide you through the journey of taking charge of your finances and pursuing your dreams fearlessly.
Tune in every week as we share tips, stories, and expert insights to help you crush your money goals and embrace change with open arms. Welcome to Season 7, Quit with Conviction. Well, Ann, welcome to this season's podcast. I have to say, I'm incredibly excited to talk to you as a woman who has built a career, many accolades, lots of contribution to what we see now, even in the investment world, specifically related to retirement accounts. Welcome to our podcast and giving us some of your time and expertise today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit for the audience who you are, what you've done, and what you're doing now.
So I described myself once as a recovering portfolio manager. So I spent almost 30 years at JP Morgan Asset Management, managing other people's money. And sort of the last 20 of that, I was really focused on helping people who were saving for retirement, specifically in 401k plans, save and invest their money. And I was asked to basically figure out what kind of products we should be offering in that space in the early 2000s. And target date funds were just beginning to take off. So I ended up doing a whole bunch of research, big data research, sort of academic behavioral economics research, and portfolio design to build JP Morgan's target date funds, which I led and managed for almost 15, 20 years until I retired in 2020. So it was a fabulous journey, and we used a lot of very sophisticated modeling techniques and sort of tried to weave real people into what we did and also the way people behave with money, which sort of led to a lot of the insights that I've incorporated into the book about the way people feel about money and the way they interact with it and the best ways to both understand and overcome our innate sort of DNA wiring, but also things that happen to us along the way, the stories that we are telling ourselves, that our families tell us, the experiences that we've had, and all of that shapes the way we react to money.
Yeah. Can you tell a little bit more for our audience, explain what a target date fund is for them? Because I think we've got a lot of professional women who have access to 401ks, right? And they may have a long list or a short list of what to choose from. Right. So I'd love to hear your recollection of that.
So starting in 2008 and really kind of finishing up probably in 2015, most 401k plans started adopting what's called target date funds. And a target date fund is literally what its name says, which is a fund that targets the date that you expect to retire what the investment strategy does is invest very aggressively for workers in their 20s and gradually decrease the investment risk to become more conservative so that when you're in your late 50s and 60s, you're taking less risk. You have less risk of a big market event like 2008 really damaging your retirement portfolio. And so it's a way to automate investing. One of the things that we and many others have observed is when people are asked to invest for themselves and by themselves, they fall into a couple of traps. One is to be overconfident and to leave all their money in stocks. And sometimes that works out really well, but sometimes it doesn't. And the timing of when you might need that money is not necessarily lined up with when your portfolio is doing well. Another very behavioral trap is to become overwhelmed with fear and indecision and do nothing and leave your money in cash, which is even worse. And almost regardless, once people start investing, they typically fall prey to fear or greed and tend to buy things when they're feeling confident and sell things when they're feeling less confident. And if you think about what that means, when things are doing well, the stock market's doing well, you're buying with a high price. And then when things feel scary, like they might have done at the beginning of the pandemic or in 2008, you sell, which means you're selling low. And when you buy high and sell low, you dissolve wealth, not create it. You got to do the opposite. And that's why having something like a target date fund or a balanced account or a managed account managing your money for you generally does better than most people do by themselves.
That's awesome. So you spent a lot of time with JP Morgan Chase, of course, and now you've pivoted into the work that you do now. We talk a lot about financial independence in this podcast. We talk a lot about what it affords us in terms of choices as women. That is even more complicated and beautiful at the same time. And so tell us a little bit about what you've navigated, making the decision to leave JP Morgan and do the work that you do. And I think what you have to share in that part of your journey is really important. And it tells us a lot about the value of life, in my opinion. Yeah. So I'd love to hear.
Yeah. And actually, this is the second book. I'm actually writing it right now about this exact topic, which is how do you decide, right? How do you define the goals that you're setting for yourself? And when you achieve them, how do you decide if they're what you actually set out to achieve or not? It's so interesting leaving a career like the one I had at arguably the best financial services firm in the world in a job I loved. 80% of my time, maybe 90%, I did things I loved with people I loved working with. And I hit a point where I don't know. I just wasn't very happy. And it's a strange thing to sort of look at. If you make the pros and cons list, you're like, whoa, this is a really lopsided list on the pros side. I don't understand. And it started sneaking up on me when my youngest went off to college. And I think this is not atypical. And I went into this real existential tailspin, like, who am I in the world? And what is my meaning if I don't have am I still a mother? And of course, for those of us who have kids, like, you were never not a mother.
That's true.
But it really rocked my world in ways I was really surprised by. And I found myself that fall waking up every morning thinking to myself, my commute's killing. It's about an hour and 40 minutes door to door to my office. And I just remember waking up as I did every morning at 4:45 thinking this commute is killing me. And so my husband was actually we both pivoted. He went and got a master's degree at Penn in architectural history. And I still hadn't left my job, but he was in Philly a lot. And I was like, well, I'll just get an apartment in New York and stop commuting since that's the problem. And I might as well have lit that rent money on fire. I think I stayed in that apartment maybe 6 times in a year. I didn't want to do that. And so then I started digging a little bit deeper into myself. And I'd had, I'm 100% fine. These are all very minor, but I'd had my 3rd cancer diagnosis in about 20 years. And I was like, all right, well, that's a little sign from the universe I should be paying attention to. And there was just this sort of drip, drip, drip of I need to figure out what I'm doing. Yeah. And I eventually realized that what I really, really wanted to do were 2 specific things. One, I really wanted to do a pilgrimage walk. And there's a pilgrimage walk that goes from Canterbury, England to Rome. And I wanted to do that whole walk. And the second thing I wanted to do was write the book that I've written that's coming out in a couple of weeks. And I just thought I have to stop working. I mean, and it wasn't so much I don't like what I'm doing, or I don't like where I am, or I want to leave even. It was actually, it took me years to do it after. I mean, I'd spent probably 3 years just waffling and agonizing over the decision. And it was a couple of things. One, I hit an age where I was able to retire and keep my deferred compensation and buy into the health plan. So there was like some technical stuff there. And I guess I hit a point in my career where I had done everything I thought I could do and wanted to do in my current role. And I wasn't attracted to the next roles that were emerging for me. So there was sort of that's not really what I want to do. And frankly, I'd built a fabulous team and I felt like I was blocking everybody underneath me. So as long as I'm sitting around here, nobody else is going anywhere, right?
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of that. So I sort of put all that together and thought, yeah, it's time to go. I want to go when the party's still good too. I don't want to leave when they're turning out the lights and asking me to go, right? So I felt like I was leaving at the best point in the party, which is maybe something too.
It's interesting that you said you were kind of working through that for a few years.
Yeah.
And I know what it feels like. I certainly did not work in my space for 3 decades, but the 15 years at one company was interesting because I saw so much transformation and made really, really amazing friendships because you go through a lot of stuff with people. But there's that little tugging of the heartstrings, right? Along the way, those little signs. Interesting thing that I love about your story and where I feel like we have a bit of in common is we're taking the skills that we've worked so hard at, right? And the experience that we have acquired and the knowledge and the wisdom, and we want to pay it forward to other people. And as women, it's really an awesome thing to see, right? And so now tell us a little bit about the book and what you're looking to accomplish with what you want to embark on people.
So for me, this is a lot of my own personal story, which is in the book for 2 reasons. One, I think it's important, even if you look at the resume and award-winning this and patent holder and that, blah, 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 right? It's like I was terrible with my personal money. I did a great job managing other people's money, but that wasn't my money. It was somebody else's. It was easy. It was in a different box in my head, right? And I think it's really important to create space for people to understand that it's okay to struggle with these things and that we all do, frankly. Many people do. I shouldn't say everybody because some people don't. Some people are wired differently and find it easier to delay gratification and save. I am not one of them. And other people have strong financial mentors in their life as children, or their families have practices that really ground them well. And I had neither of those. So I think it's important to make us all more comfortable acknowledging that. And one of my pet peeves is that I think the financial services industry doesn't do a good enough job recognizing the emotional part of that. They do a great job recognizing the sort of externalities of it. But the way I think that the industry in general tries to help people just feels lectury and just save more than you spend or save less than you earn. Put your money to work. And it's just like, what does that even mean? I don't even know where to start unpacking that. Like we need to help people unpack things, both in general and in the vocabulary that we use, but also with our own emotions and the way we react. And a big part of my message is like, stop trying to fight yourself. Just figure out what you do and try to reframe your environment so you don't keep doing it. Because sometimes it's a losing battle. Like, it's like, I will never not want to spend money. Let me put guardrails around myself. It's like, there's an analogy to food for some people, right? Like if the cookies are on the counter, I'm going to eat them. Like,
Absolutely.
Don't put them on the counter, or better yet, don't put them in the house.
Attention, ladies. Want to be a debt-free millionaire? I'm your co-host, Stephanie, and I'm here to help you activate your hard-earned income and achieve financial independence. For being a Crush Your Money Goals listener, I invite you to book your free personal one-on-one consultation with me today and get started on your wealth building journey. Visit www.womenswealtheffect.com/free. That's www.womenswealtheffect.com/free and take control of your financial future. Don't wait. Yeah. I actually use that as a similar analogy around the just not seeing it piece. I was like, the best thing I could have done for myself at 22 was invest in the 401k because I didn't see that money. And so then I quickly realized like there was a literal psychological thing about not seeing that money. And if I could figure out how to not see more money, then it really helped us save $500,000, which was the wrong thing to do. We should have invested it. We learned that lesson, right? But that's part of one of our stories, right? But I love the element of psychological understanding here. For your book is focused a lot on younger individuals learning how to take advantage of time,
Yes.
right? And use that to their advantage so that their assets grow and have a better chance of growing over time. I exited Dell thinking about all the other women that were sitting around me, in a way, kind of suffering in silence, because I had a very big identity element tied up into work, right? And like, this is all I could do. This is what I'm known for. This is what my parents envisioned success for me. Like, same thing. What am I going to be outside of this? For women who are 15, 20 years into their careers, making good money, but finding themselves in that, I'm living paycheck to paycheck. What do I need to do here? What are maybe the 2 or 3 things you would give them in terms of advice?
For me, a huge part of feeling, I didn't really wrestle with the identity thing so much. That for me was like empty nest thing, was the identity crusher, not the workplace. And I might have the luxury of having established a personal brand, if you will, in this space that is strong enough that it's not something that dissolved when I left JP Morgan. I was that again, whether that was strategy or luck, we can debate, but maybe more luck than strategy on my part, but it's true. For me, it was more about figuring out my cash flow situation. And I'll be very transparent, because of the way I spent, we could not have maintained our lifestyle on what we had saved. And I had no intention of wanting to do that anyway, because it would be really boring. So a lot of my exit strategy, right, the timing of it specifically was, okay, I know I have 3 years of deferred compensation coming in over 3 years. So that's a real cushion to help provide this transition into this next chapter. And then the second one was, how do I think about replacing some significant fraction of my pre-retirement income? Not all of it, because we have saved enough that if we don't touch it until we are in our sort of mid to late 60s, maybe 70, we'll be fine. But how do we let that keep growing for another decade or two and keep the income coming in to cover our cost base? And so for me, that year or two of existential soul searching was also, to some extent, how do I think I can bring in some money, and what happens if I decide in a year or two this was all a ghastly mistake and I want to repivot and go back to work. And so for me, a big part of my off-ramp strategy was joining corporate boards. And so for me, a big part of my off-ramp was, okay, what are some things I know I can do that will make money? And if I can't or don't like it, will give me the experience and the credentialization to repivot back into a full-time job. So part of it was keep my corporate skills or my professional brain engaged, because I like it. For me, board work is all of the good stuff about my old job and none of the icky stuff.
Yes.
Right? I'm not writing anybody's performance reviews anymore.
That's
I'm
right.
getting to do this sort of, somebody described it as head in, hands out, which I think is a great fun. So that was a big part of my strategy, which is just look at it from a straight up cash flow perspective. What do we need? And between my husband and myself, what are we confident we can do? What are some potentials? And for me, speaking and I don't really want to do consulting per se, but like where are the, if you will, side hustles that I think can help add to my income that are still completely aligned with the mission that I have, which is to help people save more money. So the boards I'm on are aligned around that. The book, the speaking around the book is all aligned around that. So for me, it was figuring out ways to monetize that, but also do things I care about and also not suck up all of my time.
Yeah, no, I love that. There's a lot of freedom in having a plan. Like people like to say, knowledge is power. I like to tell people that a plan is power, really, at the end of the day. And your plan can have a few different options and scenarios. Keep it simple, right? But at the same time, you at least know, versus allowing all the anxiety and the fear to linger with you, right? When you're trying to do something new and or different that you might not have originally envisioned. For women who are navigating through the idea, you had written in a couple of things, like some options of things you could speak about. But when women are thinking about, hey, I have this skill set, I want to go off and do something with it to create impact, right? There's some things you have to consider when it comes to continuing to support your retirement. What are some of those things that you think through whenever going off on your own versus having the corporate structure behind you?
Well, just in terms of like, not even retirement per se, but just what you're good at and what you're not. Like I have never been good at what one of my former colleagues used to call administrivia. Like I'm terrible at it. I am terrible at managing my calendar. I triple book myself. One of the things I realized pretty quickly is I need to figure out how to replace certain things that I took for granted as an executive. One of them is part-time virtual executive assistant, right? Like I just really need that. I also really miss having a team and leading a team. And so when I think about the virtual team that I've partially recreated around myself, some of it is like to help do things that I'm terrible at and or take me a huge amount of time. So, all right, I had to reach out to my network and get a couple of names of people that can help me out in a pinch when some stuff I can do by myself, but some stuff I can't. And so just being honest with yourself about what you can do, what you like to do, what you can do adequately if forced, and what is just going to be such a nightmare that you really just need to figure out how to work around it or outsource it, and if you can afford to do it. So there's just a logistical thing about like what tasks do you want to do in your future life and how are you going to get them done. I will also say that understanding, and you kind of can't get there until you do it, but what are you really going to miss about work? And to me, this collaborating and brainstorming and ideation, like I don't do it well by myself, which is ironic. So I created a team for myself, right? And I'm in a writer's group and I have people I can bounce ideas off of, right? So how do you function?
Yeah.
And how do you do that? Financially, again, I keep thinking about things in just straight up cash flow terms. Like what are your bills? What are your have to do's? What are you there's sort of the minimum needs, wants, and desires, right? And just take all the desires off the table for a while, because if you're transitioning this, just don't go there. What are your needs and what are some of your wants? And what's your line of sight to filling those in? We were, again, in the fortunate position to say, if we never put another dime into our retirement savings and don't touch them for 15 years, we'll be fine. Okay, fine, let's let that go. So in your cash flow projections, right, what is that investment hole that you still need to fill? And that's, if you're not working with a financial advisor, you can hire someone by the hour to help you map out a plan that might make more economic sense than turning your money over to them to manage. But figuring out how long you think you can keep income coming in, how long you can sustain the activity that you're doing, right? And then maybe also have a plan B or C, which is, if I really hate this, what's my on-ramp back into a job?
Yes. Yeah, I think the finding out where those holes are. I mean, I tell people a lot of us are in roles and positions where we're managing billion-dollar plans, billion-dollar decisions. We have frameworks around us all the time, right? That we apply to our everyday work habits. And flipping that and framing those into our either personal finance situation, which for me, right, as a planner and forecaster of piece parts around the COVID timeframe, that really tested my experience, right? But I now look at financial planning in a completely different way, right? It at least helps me understand action over here, outcome over here, and it removes a lot of the questioning, fear, and anxiety. But we have that capability. We have those skills. And so whether you decide to continue working for a company or for yourself, applying a lot of that principle, the blocking and tackling, is really helpful and important. And I love what you said about be honest with yourself about what you like to do and what you don't like to do, and maybe what you just don't do well. Asking for help is important. And I will say, like Bernadette and I, as an example, even in this podcast, we do it together because this is an opportunity for us to collaborate and meet other individuals and have rich conversation. And it makes the solo entrepreneurial journey less solo-y.
Start your freedom plan today with Crush Your Money Goals. You can transform your financial future with our personalized program. Join me, Bernadette Joy, your millionaire mentor, and unlock your potential. In just 90 days, build the skills to grow your wealth and secure your financial future. Your future is waiting. Enroll now at crushyourmoneygoals.com.
And people tend to think, oh, I'll miss my identity as Ann Luster, managing partner, whatever. I miss being part of a team that is aligned around a goal that we are accomplishing together. I actually miss that more than I knew I was going to miss it. I was surprised at how much I missed that. Like I really miss that, right? So one of the boards I'm on gives me some of that experience, right? Because I'm leading a sort of strategic objective for the board, and I get to recreate some of that, right? So it's like, how are you going to and some of this you won't discover until you leave, but the more yourself and what you value and what gives you satisfaction, the better chance you'll have at recreating that and really enjoying this next chapter.
Yeah, those little signs from the universe telling you this isn't an option, but do you really want to do it? I get that.
Yeah.
What has been the most surprising but yet exciting thing about this new phase for you, right? That you kind of look up and go, wow.
I guess a couple of different things, and they're linked. The big one is how much I enjoy learning. And I have always thought of myself as a lifelong learner, but I've taken a couple of classes now on giving keynote speeches and one on writing a book, ironically, after I sold my book. But I am a real learner, and I think I will always be unhappy if I'm not formally learning something. I took singing lessons for years before I retired, and I just want to be in that coachy learning environment, right? I got too senior at work to feel like that was true anymore. And if you think you've learned enough, then you need to get out of there. But it just may be one of the reasons I left, right? Maybe I stopped learning, and that was another reason I just decided to leave. Actually, that's probably true. But the other thing that surprised me when I left, one of the things I told people out loud I was going to do was write a book. Now, one of the reasons I said it out loud as much as I did is to force myself to do it, because I was pretty sure if I hadn't said it publicly, I needed the shame factor actually to help me do it. And that was a little self-imposed shame there that I would have been too embarrassed not to have done it. So
that's awesome. Tell us where we can find you and what the next year looks like in terms of the things you're excited about.
So you can find me on my website, which is annelester.com, ANNELESTER.com. I'm on all the social media, and you can find me. My handle is SaveSmartWN, the W being with, which was too long for Instagram. So SaveSmartWN. And the next year, I don't know, honestly. Like, I've got this book launching, and I have some time in my schedule, and I really hope I fill it up with speaking engagements, and I'm out talking to people about the book. And I really hope that that's sort of half of so I think about my portfolio, if you will, is maybe 40 to 45% board work. And then the other is book, speaking, creative, doing long walks, skiing, hiking, stuff like that, reading some novels. But I think I'll like the speaking.
Yeah.
So my question is, do I want that to be half of my time? It involves a great deal of travel, and like, I have to see how I feel about that.
Yeah.
So that's my hope, is that that's what I spend the next year doing. And then I will evaluate if I find it worthwhile. And I mean that both financially and sort of spiritually or energy wise. And I'm trying to be extremely open-minded about just seeing where this goes.
Yeah. I love how you're giving yourself permission to test the waters and see, like, how does this feel?
It's so hard. I keep getting, I better do this. I better nail this down. I better say yes to that. I'm like, no, you promised yourself you wouldn't do that. No. And I told myself, do not commit to doing anything more formally until you are a year out from this book launch. Like, you just can't say yes or no to anything and it is so hard.
You feel like that's hard because that's just the way that you'd been operating, even in like just the work environment. Like, it's because for Bernadette and I talk about this all the time. We're like, how have we created our own self-imposed deadlines and expectations, right?
Some of it is a thing I've been battling. And again, this is a lot of what I'll go into in my next book about how I felt comfortable when my calendar was full, which I think ultimately also inhibited what I was able to achieve in my formal role. Like, I didn't own and drive what I wanted to do enough. And that's on me, right? That was me letting externalities impose structure. And then I felt like I was busy and I was like accomplishing things, which is ridiculous. So some of it is that impulse. Some of it is a planner. Some of it is like financial anxiety. Like, what if the book doesn't sell? What if nobody wants to hire me to give speeches? What if I better say yes to this right now? And again, I can look at the numbers, I can look at the spreadsheets and go, that's ridiculous. Like, that is actually ridiculous, but it's still there, right? Yeah. So one of the things I've really been challenging myself to do in my own growth is to really get a little more comfortable letting go of things and saying, I have confidence that I've got my plan B and my plan C and my plan D, and I have an order of things that I'm letting unfold, and I have to be confident in my own ability to let those unfold because I thought them through very carefully.
Yeah.
But it's scary and it's hard.
It's very hard. 2 years into this, and same thing. Like I keep telling myself I'm going to do a post of like what my old calendar used to look like and what it looks like now and how hard it has been to get from this journey to this journey. But it takes a lot of purpose and intention, and it takes a lot of getting to know yourself. But we now have the space, right, to get to know ourselves in a different way.
One of the writers groups I'm in had we did this short 15-minute time writing thing. And one of the prompts was like, write about something you didn't, I forget what the prompt was, but I ended up writing this really tight little piece on what my old routine felt like. And it was like, alarm went off at 4:45 and I had to leave the house by 5 to 6. Otherwise I'd miss the train. You know, boom, 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 scheduled down to the minute. And I'd get to the office and my day was in front of me. I never had to think about it. Just boom, boom, boom. And the only time I ever felt like I could breathe was when I was walking from Penn Station to our offices in Midtown, and I'd walk through Bryant Park and I'd look at the trees and I'd stop and breathe. And then I'd go again, right? And I found myself really missing that certainty of just not having to think about what I wanted to do every day. And that's really unmooring. Yeah. If you were functioning in this high pressured sort of senior executive place, like I never had to stop and think. I mean, and like I said, I think to my detriment, right? I didn't let myself. Yeah. It was, and I wrote a version of that same piece, but from the other point of view, which is how much I missed literally, what do I want to have for breakfast? Like I used to walk into the cafeteria and Louise, who used to make the omelets, would look at me and say, "Gotcha, babe." And like, I wouldn't even have to say anything, right? I would just have my breakfast. And I literally wake up every morning and go, do I want yogurt? Do I want to make an omelet? I don't know. How much time? And it's just like it's this weird existential. I mean, I don't do this anymore, but I went through a phase.
Like you don't
having an existential crisis over breakfast every morning. You're just like, oh my God, I have to think about everything now. And it was really overwhelming. So it's an interesting transition.
Yeah. And my husband makes a joke. He's like, you used to make so many decisions, like hundreds of them every day. He's like, and you struggle to do that now. And I'm like, yeah. It's this interesting process, but I'm glad that I'm not alone because I thought I was just going a little crazy myself.
And not to sell the book I haven't written yet, but like this whole next book is around how do you understand what you want and have it be something that you're doing because you are drawn to it rather than because of some externality some external exoskeleton that you built for yourself or that was built for you or you cooperated in having built. And that to me is what's so fabulous about the privilege, frankly, of being in a position where you can make a decision like this, or even if it's been forced upon you, right? That's the calling, right? Is to actually start to stop and think about these challenges, and I think it's what helps us grow. But it's both exhilarating and unnerving.
Yeah, it's different. Change is always interesting and unique. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and your thoughts on these different topics. Thank you. So looking forward to the next book and good luck with everything.
I hope so. That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Crush Your Money Goals podcast.
Please leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to this podcast. Your feedback helps us spread the wealth of knowledge to more women like you.
And if you'd like to work with me to help you answer the important question, if I'm on track to retire, be sure to snag my free financial independence planner at womenswealtheffect.com/planner.
And if you'd like to work with me to kickstart your financial freedom plan, you can grab the Cha-Ching Checklist, my free guide at crushyourmoneygoals.com/free guide.
See you next time.